It was one of those quiet late evenings when the world outside felt softer, like it had taken a deep breath and finally exhaled. I was curled up on the couch, half watching the TV while my hands cradled a warm mug of chamomile tea. Then I heard it, the cheerful ping of my phone, a voice message from Daniel. That sound always made my heart skip, and without even realizing it, I smiled. I imagined him saying something sweet, maybe an, "I miss you," maybe a joke only we understood. I tapped play, and his voice wrapped around me, low, intimate, with that warmth that used to melt me. "I can't stop thinking about last night. You looked so good. She has no idea." My smile froze in place, my breath catching before I could even process it. Those words, they weren't for me. Then came the final blow, delivered with almost lazy confidence. "I'll tell her I'm working late again tonight. Can't wait to see you." My fingers tightened around the phone, as if holding it harder could change what I'd just heard. The room didn't feel the same anymore. My cozy evening had been replaced by a cold, hollow stillness. Inside me, something locked into place. A shift I couldn't undo. I didn't replay it right away. I just sat there, staring at the dark screen of my phone, the weight of those words pressing against my chest. My mind felt like it was splintering into two halves, one clinging to the man I thought I knew, the other already piecing together what his slip had revealed. I could hear the television still murmuring in the background, but it sounded far away, as if the whole room had shifted into some parallel version of my life. When I finally hit play again, it wasn't to torture myself. It was to be sure. To burn his tone, his inflection, his careless certainty into my memory. Each time I listened, I caught more. The way he lingered on certain words, the soft chuckle at the end, as if nothing in the world could touch their little secret. That laugh told me more than the words ever could. A strange calm settled over me, almost unnatural. I thought I'd cry, or shake, or scream. But instead, my heartbeat slowed. I took a deep breath and saved the audio to my phone, then forwarded it to my email, just in case. If he'd sent me a message, I'd keep it safe, because something told me this would be the beginning of a very different conversation. I placed the phone face down on the coffee table, but it was too late. The words were etched into my mind, playing on a loop that no silence could break. I stared at the steam curling up from my tea, wondering how many times he'd worked late, how many nights had actually belonged to her. My fingers drummed lightly against my leg, not from nerves, but from something sharper. Focus. I thought about the way Daniel had kissed me goodbye that morning, casual and easy, like a man with nothing to hide. I remembered the faint smell of cologne on his jacket last week, a scent I didn't recognize, and how he'd brushed it off as just from the office. Little moments that had felt strange at the time now clicked into place, forming a picture I didn't want to see but couldn't ignore. I didn't text him back, not tonight. Instead, I leaned back into the couch, letting the shadows of the room settle around me. If this was the game he wanted to play, fine. But I'd be the one choosing the ending. And I already knew it wasn't going to be the one he expected. The next morning, I woke up with the message still echoing in my head, but my face in the mirror didn't give a thing away. No puffy eyes, no trembling lips, just me, steady as ever. If Daniel noticed anything different, he'd probably assume I was just tired. And that was exactly what I wanted. He didn't deserve to see the storm forming behind my calm. I slipped into the rhythm of our usual texts, good morning, little jokes, the casual updates couples send each other during the day. My fingers moved like they always did, but every tap on the screen was calculated. I wanted him relaxed, comfortable. I wanted him to believe nothing had changed. Meanwhile, that recording sat safely in my email, a quiet weapon waiting for its moment. It was strange how something as small as a voice message could become the centerpiece of an entirely new plan. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was curious. Who was she? How long had this been going on? And more importantly, how could I make him regret pressing send? I started watching him differently, like an actress studying her scene partner, noting every subtle shift, every hesitation between lines. The way he'd pause before answering a question about his day. The slightly delayed smile when I asked if he'd be home for dinner. Even the way his eyes darted to the side when his phone buzzed on the counter. These were things I might have brushed off before. Now, they were neon signs. At night, I'd lie beside him, pretending to drift into sleep while he scrolled through his phone. My breathing slowed, my face turned toward the wall, but my ears were sharp, waiting for the faint clicks of typing, the muffled laugh he thought I couldn't hear. The man I loved was right there beside me, and yet I'd never felt so alone, or so awake. Each lie he told was a thread, and I was quietly collecting them, weaving them into something bigger. Something that would unravel in a way he'd never see coming. But I needed more than suspicion. I needed answers. And if he thought I'd confront him like some heartbroken fool, he didn't know me at all. So I kept my smile ready and my voice light, slipping questions into conversation the way a fisherman casts a line. Casual, patient, waiting for the tug. Busy day at work? Who was on the call so late? Little things. Just enough to make him answer without thinking. And every now and then, there'd be a flicker in his eyes, the tiniest crack in his script, and I'd tuck that detail away for later. I didn't rush. I couldn't. This wasn't about catching him in the moment. It was about building something undeniable, something even he couldn't talk his way out of. Every observation was a puzzle piece, and with each day that passed, the picture grew clearer. The more I saw, the more I understood just how long this had been going on. But I wasn't ready to play my hand yet, not until I knew exactly who she was. Because when I finally moved, I wanted her sitting right there in the middle of the fallout. It didn't take long for the trail to lead me somewhere familiar, his so-called work events. Those evenings he claimed were full of deadlines, and late-night brainstorming suddenly had a face attached to them. Her name was Maya. Pretty, polished, the kind of woman who knew exactly how to pose for a group photo and somehow end up standing next to him in every single one. I found her through a tagged picture on social media, smiling in a dimly lit restaurant with a caption about team celebrations. Daniel was in the background, his arm draped over the back of her chair like it belonged there. My stomach tightened, but my hands stayed steady on the screen. I clicked through more photos. There they were at a charity gala, at a rooftop bar, even at what looked like a weekend wine tasting. All work. Each image felt like another small match, striking in the dark. I wasn't angry in the way I expected to be. I was deliberate, focused. Maya wasn't just a name now, she was a part of the story. And knowing that made the ending I was writing for them both even sharper in my mind. I didn't confront him. Not when I saw those photos. Not when I found the posts she'd liked at odd hours. The little inside jokes buried in their comments. Instead, I let the information settle in me like a secret only I was clever enough to hold. The more I knew, the calmer I became. If I played this right, I could make sure neither of them ever forgot what they'd done. At dinner, I'd ask him about his day, my tone light, my eyes steady. He'd talk about meetings or client calls, and I'd nod along, as if I hadn't already seen the evidence of his night out. It was a strange power, knowing the truth while he performed his lies like some rehearsed monologue. Maya's world began to take shape in my mind. Where she worked. Where she liked to eat. Which friends she tagged most often. I didn't need to guess about the connection between them anymore. It was all there, mapped out like a trail I could follow whenever I wanted. And soon, I'd choose the perfect place for it to end. The idea came to me slowly, like a photograph developing in darkroom chemicals. Faint outlines first, then details so sharp they almost cut. I wouldn't just end things. I'd make sure the moment landed with precision, in a way that would burn itself into their memories, public, undeniable, and timed so perfectly that neither of them could hide behind excuses. So I kept the act going, sweet texts, weekend plans, even a kiss goodbye in the morning that felt like placing a seal on an envelope I already knew I'd set on fire. Every word, every gesture, every smile I gave him now had an expiration date. He just didn't know it. By now, I knew where she'd be, and when. I knew his schedule better than he did. All that was left was choosing the stage, and making sure every seat in the house was full when the curtain went up. The invitation came on a Wednesday evening, as if the universe had decided to hand me my stage. Daniel mentioned it casually over dinner. A dinner party at a friend's place, lots of colleagues, a few of my acquaintances too. He framed it like a social obligation, but I could see the flicker of pride in his eyes. This was his crowd, his image to polish. I smiled and agreed instantly, already feeling the weight of the small portable speaker tucked away in my mind. It was sitting in my desk drawer at home, harmless for now, but in my head it had already become the sharpest weapon I owned. All I'd have to do was press one button, and the truth would speak for itself. Over the next few days, I played my role flawlessly. I helped him pick out a shirt, asked about the guest list, even joked about how we'd better not be the last to arrive. He never suspected a thing. And why would he? In his mind, he was still in control, still the one managing the narrative. He didn't realize I was about to hijack it entirely. The night of the party, I dressed with care. Not too flashy, not too understated, just enough to blend into the crowd until I was ready to stand out. The portable speaker fit perfectly inside my handbag, hidden between my wallet and a lipstick I probably wouldn't use. On the ride over, Daniel was in high spirits, humming along to the radio, his hand resting lightly on my knee as if everything in our world was exactly as it should be. The house was already buzzing when we arrived, glasses clinking, warm laughter spilling from the kitchen, the low hum of conversations weaving together. I smiled, greeted familiar faces, and followed him through the rooms like any proud girlfriend would. All the while, I kept one hand near my bag, feeling the outline of my plan resting there like a secret heartbeat. When it was his turn to speak, mid-toast, glass raised, words about trust and loyalty spilling from his mouth like cheap wine, I felt a calm so deep it almost scared me. Every eye was on him, and in a few seconds they wouldn't be. I stepped forward, my smile fixed, but my pulse steady. "Speaking of loyalty," I said, my voice cutting through the hum of the room. "Daniel, I think everyone here deserves to hear the man of the hour." A few people chuckled, expecting a playful story. Daniel's brow furrowed slightly, but before he could speak, I reached into my bag. The click of the speaker powering on was almost lost under the shifting of bodies, but the moment his voice filled the room, silence fell like a dropped curtain. "I can't stop thinking about last night. You looked so good. She has no idea. I'll tell her I'm working late again tonight. Can't wait to see you." Every face turned toward him, then to Maya, sitting just a few feet away, frozen mid-sip of her wine. Her cheeks flushed deep red, while Daniel's expression went from confusion to horror in the span of a heartbeat. The air was thick, unblinking, and for once, he had no clever line to save himself. I didn't stay to watch the full collapse. The moment the recording ended, the room seemed to breathe in and hold it, whispers starting like cracks in glass, people exchanging glances they'd never take back. Maya set her glass down hard enough to make it clink, then pushed back her chair and stormed out without looking at him. Daniel called after her once, then twice, but his voice had lost all the authority he loved to carry. I slipped my bag over my shoulder, ignoring his outstretched hand and the frantic look in his eyes. My heels clicked against the hardwood as I walked past a circle of colleagues who wouldn't meet his gaze anymore. No one tried to stop me. No one needed to. I wasn't leaving in anger. I was leaving with every ounce of control I'd come to claim. Outside, the cool night air felt cleaner, lighter, like it had been waiting for me. I didn't check my phone, didn't look back at the windows glowing behind me. Whatever happened in that house next was his mess to live in. I was already done with it. In the days that followed, I expected silence from him, a retreat, maybe even shame. Instead, my phone lit up constantly with calls I ignored, voicemails I never listened to. Friends who'd been at the party sent me messages, some supportive, some stunned, all confirming one thing. The story had spread far beyond that living room. Daniel's perfect image had cracked in public, and there was no glue strong enough to fix it. A week later, the calls turned into long texts, paragraphs begging for a chance to explain. You misunderstood. It wasn't what it sounded like. Each line reeked of desperation, the kind that only comes when someone realizes they've lost control of the narrative. I didn't reply. My silence was louder than any confrontation could have been. And then, one night, another message. Shorter this time. Just a plea for forgiveness, no excuses. I opened it, read the first sentence, and without finishing, hit delete. My phone screen went dark, and with it, the last thread connecting me to him finally snapped. Weeks passed, and life found a new rhythm, one that didn't include second-guessing a partner's late nights or decoding half-truths. My mornings felt lighter, my evenings quieter, and for the first time in months, I slept without wondering who he was really with. Sometimes I'd catch myself smiling at the smallest things. A perfectly brewed cup of coffee, sunlight spilling through the blinds, reminders that peace can be louder than chaos if you let it. Daniel became a ghost story people whispered about in certain circles, his downfall replayed in the corners of dinner conversations I'd never attend. I didn't need updates. I already knew the ending. Men like him always think they're the author, never realizing they can be written out of the story entirely. In the end, he'd taught me something without meaning to, how powerful a message can be. His was meant to be secret, hidden in the dark. Mine? I made sure it was loud enough for everyone to hear.
You need to be careful about Vanessa. My grandmother warned me over dinner at her sprawling estate. Her hands, weathered by 92 years but still steady, clasped mine across the antique oak table. I've seen how she looks at you when she thinks no one's watching. That girl isn't in love with you, Alex. She's in love with what you represent. I pulled my hands away, feeling the familiar irritation rise. For 2 months, Grandma Rose had been making these comments about my fiancé, and I was tired of defending our relationship. Grandma, not everyone is a gold digger, I said, trying to keep my voice patient. Vanessa loves me for who I am. She didn't even know about the family money when we met. Grandma Rose raised one perfectly arched eyebrow, a skill she'd mastered over nearly a century of seeing through people's facades. Is that what she told you? That she had no idea the Harringtons own half of Boston's waterfront properties and have a foundation with their name on it. We met at a charity event for underprivileged kids. I explained for what felt like the 100th time. She was volunteering just like me. At a gala hosted by the Harrington Foundation, Grandma pointed out, wearing a dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent while volunteering. She has her own money, I defended. Her design business is doing well. So well that she needed to move into your penthouse within 3 months of dating. Grandma Rose sighed, her eyes softening. Alex, I'm not trying to ruin your happiness. I just don't want you to make the same mistake your father made with Clarissa. I flinched at the mention of my stepmother, who had indeed divorced my father after 5 years, walking away with a settlement that had made headlines in the Boston Globe. But Vanessa wasn't Clarissa. My fiancé was warm, supportive, and genuinely interested in my work at the foundation, work that had nothing to do with the family fortune. Vanessa isn't like that, I insisted. Besides, I'm not Dad. I can tell when someone is being genuine. Grandma Rose looked unconvinced. Perhaps you can, but humor an old woman and consider a small test. A test? I repeated. What kind of test? Nothing drastic, she said, a familiar glint of mischief in her eyes. Just a little scenario to see Vanessa's true colors. I should have walked away then. Should have dismissed my grandmother's concerns as the paranoia of a woman who had seen too many people try to get close to her family for the wrong reasons. Instead, I leaned forward. What did you have in mind? 2 weeks later, I was beginning to regret agreeing to Grandma Rose's plan. Vanessa and I were having dinner at Maison Laurent, the 5-star French restaurant where I proposed 6 months earlier. I'd been distracted all evening, mentally rehearsing the script Grandma Rose had helped me prepare. Alex, are you okay? Vanessa asked, reaching across the table to touch my hand. Her engagement ring, a 5-carat diamond that had been in my family for generations, caught the light. You've barely touched your food. This was it, the moment of truth. Actually, I began, lowering my voice. I've had some unsettling news. Concern immediately filled her eyes. What is it? Is someone sick? No, nothing like that, I assured her. It's about the family business. Vanessa leaned closer, her voice dropping to match mine. What about it? There's been a significant loss, I said, watching her face carefully. A major investment went bad, really bad. The lawyers say we might lose almost everything. For a moment, Vanessa's expression froze. Then she squeezed my hand. Oh, Alex, that's terrible. But it's just money, right? We still have each other. I felt a wave of relief, followed immediately by guilt for testing her this way. Right, of course. But it might mean some major changes. The penthouse, the summer house in the Hamptons, even my position at the foundation. It could all be gone. Wow, Vanessa said, her eyes widening slightly as she processed this. That's a lot to take in, but we'll figure it out together. Maybe I can take on more design clients. My business has been growing, and with some extra effort, I could probably double my income. Her reaction seemed genuine, and I felt increasingly uncomfortable with the deception. Maybe Grandma Rose was wrong. Maybe I should end this charade now and come clean. But something in Vanessa's eyes, a calculation, a slight reservation, made me continue. There's one more thing, I added. My grandmother, she saw this coming somehow. She moved some assets into a separate trust years ago. The lawyers say it's protected, but what? Vanessa prompted, leaning forward. She's threatening to write me out of her will if I don't break off our engagement. I finished the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. She's convinced you're only with me for the money, and now she wants me to prove my loyalty to the family by choosing the Harrington legacy over our future together. Vanessa sat back, her face flushing with indignation. She can't do that. We're getting married in 3 months. I know, I said, trying to sound distraught. I told her I wouldn't do it, that we're in love and I don't care about the money. But Vanessa, we're talking about nearly $100 million. The last secure part of the family fortune. Vanessa was quiet for several long moments, staring at her untouched dessert. When she finally spoke, her voice was carefully measured. What exactly are you saying, Alex? That you're considering breaking up with me because your grandmother is blackmailing you? No, I said quickly. I'm saying we need to figure this out together. Maybe we postpone the wedding until this financial crisis is sorted, or we could elope quietly without telling her. Postpone the wedding, Vanessa repeated, her voice rising slightly before she controlled it. After all the planning we've done, it would just be temporary, I assured her. Once things settle down financially, we can have the celebration we planned. Vanessa took a sip of her wine, her eyes calculating over the rim of the glass. And if we elope, would your grandmother still cut you off? Probably, I admitted. She's pretty adamant. So either way, we're looking at living on my design income and whatever you can make outside the family business, she clarified. For now, yes, I said. But I have my MBA. I could find a decent job. We have to downsize significantly, but we'd make it work. Vanessa was silent again, and I could practically see the wheels turning behind her eyes. Finally, she reached across the table and took both my hands in hers. Alex, I love you and I want to marry you. But I also don't want to be the reason you lose your inheritance. That's too much pressure on our relationship. What are you saying? I asked, though I was beginning to see where this was heading. Maybe, she paused, looking down at our joined hands. Maybe your grandmother is right. Not about me being a gold digger, she added quickly, but about us needing more time. If we postpone the wedding, you won't lose your inheritance and we can take time to build our own financial security. So do you want to stay engaged but delay the wedding indefinitely? I clarified. Just until your grandmother comes around, or until the situation changes, she said delicately. I understood what she wasn't saying. Until Grandma Rose died and I received my inheritance. And if she never changes her mind? I pressed. If the choice is always between you and the money. Vanessa withdrew her hands, her smile tight. Let's not be dramatic, Alex. Your grandmother is 92. The situation will resolve itself eventually. The coldness of that statement hit me like a slap. I stared at the woman I'd been planning to spend my life with, suddenly seeing her through my grandmother's eyes. I see, I said quietly. You know, it's funny. I told my grandmother she was wrong about you. I defended your character, your intentions. I was so sure she was being paranoid. Vanessa's expression shifted to wariness. What are you talking about? There is no financial crisis, I said flatly. The family fortune is secure. My grandmother isn't threatening to disinherit me. It was a test, Vanessa, and you just failed spectacularly. Her face drained of color. A test? You've been testing me? My grandmother suggested it, I admitted. I didn't want to believe her concerns, but I agreed to find out for sure. Anger replaced shock on her features. So you lied to me, manipulated me, and you have the nerve to judge my reaction? I'm not proud of it, I said honestly. But I'm grateful for the clarity. You just made it very clear that you're willing to postpone our marriage indefinitely while waiting for my 92-year-old grandmother to die so you can access my inheritance. That's not fair, Vanessa protested, though her flush of guilt suggested otherwise. You put me in an impossible position. Did I? Because I think the position was actually quite simple. Do you love me enough to marry me without the guarantee of family money? Apparently the answer is no. Vanessa gathered her purse, her movements jerky with suppressed rage. I'm not having this conversation in a public restaurant after you deliberately humiliated me. We'll talk when you've calmed down and realized how paranoid and unfair you're being. She stormed out, leaving me alone with the check and the uncomfortable realization that Grandma Rose had been right all along. I didn't hear from Vanessa for 3 days. No calls, no texts, no errant visits to the penthouse she still technically lived in, but had been conspicuously absent from. On the 4th day, my assistant informed me that someone named Drake had called the foundation office looking for me. The name meant nothing, but the message sent a chill down my spine. He said to tell you that if you want to know the truth about Vanessa Clark, you should meet him at the Harbor Pub tonight at 8. Against my better judgment, I went. The Harbor Pub wasn't the kind of place you'd find at Harrington. It was dimly lit, smelled of stale beer, and catered to the working-class folks who maintained the yachts rather than those who owned them. Perfect for a conversation you didn't want overheard in Boston's elite social circles. A man in his early 30s, with the worn look of someone who'd seen harder times than I ever would, waved me over to a corner booth. Alex Harrington, I'm Drake Wilson. I slid into the booth, declining his offer of a beer. My assistant said you have information about Vanessa. Yeah, you could say that. Drake's smile was bitter, considering I was engaged to her too, about 3 years ago. A cold weight settled in my stomach. What? Vanessa Clark, right? Petite, dark hair, big blue eyes, fashion designer with her own little studio. At my nod, he continued. Yeah, that's my van. Or she was until she met Jeffrey Pullman at a charity gala. Real estate developer, old family money. Sound familiar? She was engaged to you? I repeated, still processing this information. For 8 months, Drake confirmed. We met when she was just starting her design business. I'm a contractor, helped her renovate her first studio space. Fell hard for her, proposed after a year. She said yes, moved in with me, started planning this elaborate wedding. What happened? Pullman happened. Suddenly Van was all about postponing the wedding, needing space to think, but not actually breaking up. Kept the ring, kept her stuff at my place, but was spending most nights elsewhere. When I confronted her, she claimed she needed time to focus on her business. And you found out about Pullman? Drake nodded, taking a swig of his beer. through a buddy who worked security at some of those fancy events. Showed me pictures of them together. When I confronted her again, she finally admitted it, said she found a connection she couldn't ignore. His laugh was hollow. 2 months later, she was wearing Pullman's ring, living in his mansion in Cambridge. What happened with Pullman? I asked, though I was starting to see the pattern. From what I heard, they were together about a year. Then he had some financial setbacks, nothing catastrophic, but enough that the massive wedding they'd been planning had to be scaled back. Suddenly, Vanessa discovered that they had rushed into things and needed space. Returned the ring via courier and was spotted at the Gardner Museum fundraiser the next week, scoping out her next target. Drake leaned forward. That was you, wasn't it? The Gardner event last spring. I nodded numbly, remembering how Vanessa had approached me at the bar, commenting on my donation speech with such seemingly genuine admiration. Why are you telling me this? I asked finally. Drake shrugged. Heard through the grapevine that she was engaged to a Harrington. Figured you should know what you're dealing with. I'd have appreciated a warning before she took a year of my life. After verifying Drake's story through some discreet inquiries, I called my grandmother. Her satisfaction at being right was tempered by genuine concern for me. I'm sorry, Alex. I truly am. I took no pleasure in being correct about her. I know, Grandma, I sighed. But how do I handle this? She still has most of her things at my place, including the ring. There was a long pause, then Grandma Rose said, I might have an idea. Something that will ensure Vanessa Clark never tries this scheme again, with you or anyone else. My grandmother's plan was elegant in its simplicity, requiring just a few strategic phone calls and one more deception, which seemed fair, given the circumstances. 3 days later, Vanessa finally returned to the penthouse. She entered using her key, calling out tentatively, Alex, can we talk? I was waiting in the living room, looking appropriately contrite. Vanessa, I was beginning to think you weren't coming back. She set down her purse, her expression a perfect blend of hurt and forgiveness. I needed time to process the fact that you didn't trust me. That was deeply painful. I know, I said softly, and you're right, I should have trusted my instincts about you, not my grandmother's suspicions. Vanessa sat beside me on the sofa, taking my hands in hers. We've both made mistakes. Let's put this behind us and focus on our future. Actually, I said, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Our future has changed significantly in the last few days. Wariness crept into her eyes. What do you mean? My grandmother had a stroke 2 days ago. I lied, watching her face carefully. She's stable, but the doctors aren't optimistic about her recovery. Oh, Alex, Vanessa gasped, embracing me. I'm so sorry. Thank you, I said, patting her back. But there's more. The family lawyers came to the hospital yesterday. Apparently, Grandma Rose had already signed the paperwork to transfer most of her estate directly to me, bypassing the usual inheritance process. They just needed her to review it one last time, but with her condition, I trailed off. Vanessa pulled back, her eyes wide. What does that mean exactly? It means, I said slowly, that I'm now the primary executor and beneficiary of the Rose Harrington estate. The transfer of assets has already begun. Assets? Vanessa repeated, a gleam of interest she couldn't quite disguise lighting her eyes. The Rose Harrington Trust is worth approximately $340 million, I said, naming a figure that was actually less than half the true amount. And now it's mine to manage. Vanessa was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Then she squeezed my hands. This is a lot of responsibility to take on while you're grieving. But I'll be right here beside you, supporting you through it all. Will you? I asked, my voice soft. Of course, she assured me, brushing her lips against mine. We're partners, remember? For better or worse. I kissed her back briefly, then stood and walked to the window overlooking the Boston skyline. You know, it's funny. A week ago, when I thought I might lose everything, you were suggesting we postpone our wedding indefinitely. That was a misunderstanding, Vanessa said quickly. I was just trying to respect your family's wishes. And now, I turned to face her. Now that my grandmother is incapacitated and I've inherited her fortune, you're suddenly ready to stand by my side again? Vanessa's expression hardened slightly. You're twisting my words, Alex. I've always wanted to marry you. Always? I challenged. Or just since you discovered who the Harringtons were? Tell me, Vanessa, did you approach me at the Gardner Museum fundraiser by chance? Or was I carefully selected after Jeffrey Pullman's financial situation changed? The color drained from her face. Who told you about Jeffrey? Does it matter? I also know about Drake Wilson, and probably a few others I haven't discovered yet. I moved closer to her. How long were you going to wait this time, Vanessa? Until after the wedding. Until you could secure a substantial divorce settlement. She stood abruptly, her facade cracking. You don't understand anything. Do you know how hard it is for a woman to establish herself in this world? To build security? I grew up with nothing, fighting for every opportunity. So that justifies targeting men for their money? Pretending to love them. I never said I didn't care for you, she countered. But love doesn't pay the bills, Alex. You wouldn't understand that, having never worried about money a day in your life. You're right, I acknowledged. I've been incredibly privileged. But that doesn't excuse lying and manipulation. Vanessa gathered her composure, straightening her shoulders. We clearly have different perspectives on this, but the situation has changed now. We can start fresh, be honest with each other. Actually, I said, I don't think we can. Because there's one more thing you should know. My grandmother never had a stroke. The estate hasn't been transferred. It was another test, Vanessa. And once again, you failed. Her expression contorted with rage. You manipulative bastard, you set me up. I gave you a chance to prove my grandmother wrong. I corrected. Twice. Both times you made your priorities crystal clear. Fine, she snapped, grabbing her purse. Keep your money and your paranoid games. There are plenty of other men in Boston. About that, I said calmly, you might find the social circuit less welcoming than you expect. You see, my grandmother made a few calls after we learned about your history with Drake and Jeffrey. Just casual conversations with her friends, women who chair every major charity board and gala committee in New England. Vanessa froze, her knuckles white around her purse strap. Boston's social world is smaller than you think, I continued. And my grandmother has been its unofficial gatekeeper for decades. By tomorrow, every wealthy family from here to Providence will know exactly who Vanessa Clark is and how she operates. You wouldn't, she whispered. That's my livelihood, my reputation. Actually, my grandmother already did. Protecting other families from your particular brand of career planning seemed like the responsible thing to do. Vanessa's carefully constructed poise finally shattered. You'll regret this, she hissed. Both of you. I have text messages, emails, proof that you set me up. I could sue for emotional distress, defamation. You could, I agreed. But discovery works both ways, Vanessa. Are you sure you want your pattern of targeting wealthy men exposed in court? The detailed testimony from Drake and Jeffrey about how you operated. The financial records showing how your design business was actually losing money while you portrayed it as successful. Her silence was answer enough. The engagement ring belongs to my family, I said quietly. Please leave it on the entry table on your way out. You have until Friday to collect your things from the penthouse. Anything remaining will be donated. Without another word, Vanessa yanked the ring from her finger, slammed it on the table with enough force to nick the marble surface, and stormed out. 6 months later, I was having Sunday dinner with Grandma Rose at her estate, a tradition we'd maintained religiously since the Vanessa debacle. Rebecca seems lovely, Grandma observed, referring to the pediatric surgeon I'd recently started dating, whom I'd met through normal channels at a hospital fundraiser, with no orchestration from my grandmother. Smart, accomplished, and absolutely no interest in the Harrington name or fortune. She didn't even know who we were until our third date, I confirmed, smiling at the memory of Rebecca's embarrassment when she realized who my family was. She's the real deal. I know, Grandma Rose said with a satisfied nod. I didn't have to test this one, though I did have Simmons run a discreet background check, just to be thorough. She named her longtime butler and right-hand man. Grandma. I protested, though I wasn't really surprised. Don't grandma me, she retorted. After what happened with Vanessa, a little caution is warranted. Besides, the check came back spotless. Rebecca Winters comes from a middle-class family in Worcester, put herself through medical school, and has dedicated her career to pediatric oncology. She donates 15% of her income to cancer research and has no suspicious relationship patterns. I shook my head, amused despite myself. Has anyone ever told you that you missed your calling as a private investigator? Who says I missed it? Grandma Rose's eyes twinkled. How do you think I've kept this family's reputation intact for 7 decades? Certainly not by being naive about people's intentions. I raised my wine glass in acknowledgement. To your wisdom, then. I should have listened sooner. You listened when it counted, she said, her expression softening. And you learned a valuable lesson that will serve you well when you eventually take stewardship of the family legacy. That people can be deceptive and greedy. I asked. That true character reveals itself under pressure, she corrected. In comfort and prosperity, anyone can appear virtuous. It's what people do when faced with loss or hardship that shows you who they really are. As we continued our dinner, I reflected on how close I'd come to making a catastrophic mistake with Vanessa. The woman I thought loved me had only loved what I represented: status, security, wealth. And she'd been willing to wait indefinitely for my elderly grandmother to die to secure it. I'd learned that money, while providing comfort and opportunity, also complicates human connections. It can mask genuine affection and distort relationships in ways that aren't always immediately obvious. But I'd also learned something about myself. Despite growing up with every privilege, I valued truth and authenticity more than status or appearance. And thanks to my grandmother's wisdom, meddling as it sometimes seemed, I'd discovered that principle before making a mistake I couldn't undo. By the way, Grandma Rose said casually, interrupting my thoughts, I ran into Vanessa Clark last week. I nearly choked on my wine. What? Where? At Bergdorf's. She's working as a sales associate in the designer section. Grandma sipped her water calmly. Apparently, her design business suffered some unexpected setbacks after our little intervention. She wasn't pleased to see me. I imagine not, I said, feeling a pang of something, not quite regret, but acknowledgement of how dramatically Vanessa's life had changed. Do you ever feel bad about what we did? Grandma Rose set down her glass, her expression serious. Do I regret protecting my grandson from a woman who saw him as nothing more than an ATM with a familiar last name? Who was willing to wait for me to die so she could access my money? Not for a moment. She patted my hand. We didn't ruin Vanessa Clark. We simply ensured she couldn't ruin anyone else the way she planned to ruin you. As harsh as it sounded, I knew she was right. The inheritance trap Vanessa had set for me had ultimately snapped shut on her instead. And while I took no pleasure in her downfall, I was profoundly grateful for the wisdom that had saved me from making what would have been the most expensive mistake of my life, financially and emotionally. Now, Grandma Rose said, returning to her usual brisk efficiency, when are you bringing Rebecca for dinner? I want to meet this girl properly. Soon? I promise, smiling at her transparent attempt to move my love life forward. But no tests this time, Grandma. No fake financial crisis or stroke scenarios. She raised her hand in a solemn vow. No tests. But I reserve the right to ask invasive questions. It's a grandmother's prerogative. I laughed, raising my glass again. I wouldn't have it any other way. The illoyal betrayal. Are you absolutely sure about Ryan? My brother Marcus asked, his voice lowered despite the fact that we were alone in my kitchen. The timing seems convenient. What's that supposed to mean? I replied, feeling immediately defensive. Ryan had been my best friend for 6 years, my business partner for 4, and the one person who had stood by me through everything, including my messy divorce last year. Marcus sighed, running a hand through his prematurely graying hair. At 35, just 2 years older than me, he sometimes acted like he was my father instead of my brother. Ethan, come on. You win $28 million in the lottery, and suddenly Ryan wants to expand your business partnership. Doesn't that strike you as suspicious? I slammed the refrigerator door harder than necessary, the bottles inside rattling in protest. He doesn't even know about the lottery win. I haven't told anyone except you and Mom. You sure about that? Marcus pressed. These things have a way of getting out, especially amounts that big. I'm keeping it anonymous, I insisted. The lawyer's setting up everything through a trust. Nobody will know. Marcus didn't look convinced. Just, don't make any big decisions right now, okay? Don't rush into anything with Ryan or anyone else until the dust settles. Promise me that. To get him off my back, I promised. But I had no intention of treating Ryan with sudden suspicion. Unlike my ex-wife Allison, who had clearly married me for the potential of my then-fledgling tech company and bailed when it seemed like it might fail, Ryan had stuck with me through the company's worst times. He even invested his own savings when we were on the brink of bankruptcy 2 years ago. Our app development company, Horizon Tech, had finally turned the corner 6 months ago. We weren't rich, but we were stable. With a growing client list and solid prospects, the lottery win would change everything. Not that I planned to pour all of it into the business, but having that kind of financial security would allow me to make bolder moves. Rianne and I had always talked about opening a second office, expanding our team, going after bigger clients. Now I could make that happen without the stress of risking everything. I just needed to tell him about the win first. 2 days later, Ryan and I were having our usual Friday evening beers at McCaffrey's, the dive bar near our office where we sketched our original business plan on the back of a cocktail napkin. So Ryan said, signaling the bartender for another round, "I've been thinking about that office space in the downtown tech corridor." I nodded, knowing exactly which building he meant. We'd walked past it countless times, joking about how someday we'd have our company name on the directory. The Parker Building. What about it? They got 2 suites opening up next month. I checked it out on my lunch break yesterday, perfect for what we've been talking about. Room to add at least 8 more developers, premium location, fiber internet already installed. I took a swig of my beer, considering. The timing was almost eerie given my recent windfall. That's a big step up from our current rent, I pointed out. Do you think we're ready? Ryan leaned forward, his eyes bright with the excitement I'd seen so many times when he was pitching a new idea. That's the thing, we need to act fast. Put down a significant deposit to hold the space. But I've been going over our projections, and with the Thompson contract coming through and the Westfield proposal looking good. He trailed off, watching me carefully. How significant of a deposit? I asked. 200 grand, he said quickly, as if ripping off a bandage. I know it sounds steep, but that's practically all our cash reserves, I interrupted. Ryan nodded soberly. It's a risk, no doubt. But sometimes you have to go big or go home, right? This could be our moment, Ethan. I stared at my beer, thinking, with the lottery money, $200,000 was nothing. I could front it personally without touching the business accounts. But Marcus's warning echoed in my head. Let me think about it over the weekend, I said finally. It's a big decision. Was it my imagination, or did disappointment flicker across Ryan's face? Sure, of course, he said easily. No rush. Well, some rush. They want an answer by Wednesday. But take the weekend. The conversation shifted to other topics, but I found myself studying Ryan in a way I never had before. We'd been friends since meeting at a tech conference in Chicago. He was charismatic, smart as hell, and had an infectious enthusiasm that balanced my more cautious nature perfectly. We'd built Horizon from nothing together, weathering setbacks and celebrating small victories. Was it really so suspicious that he wanted to expand now, just when we were finally seeing consistent profits? Or was Marcus making me paranoid? That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I found myself staring at my laptop screen, looking up the Parker Building's leasing information. The available suites weren't even advertised on their website yet. On a whim, I called the building's after-hours security desk. Parker Building Security, this is Jim. Hi Jim, sorry to call so late. This is Ethan Reynolds with Horizon Tech. I'm supposed to meet someone tomorrow to view some available office space, but I seem to have lost the contact information. Could you tell me who handles leasing? That would be Westside Commercial Properties. But as far as I know, there aren't any vacancies coming up soon. Place is full, waiting list even. A cold feeling spread through my chest. You're sure? I was told there were 2 suites opening next month. Nope. Last vacancy got filled in February. We're at 100% occupancy with everyone locked into multi-year leases. I thanked him and hung up, my mind racing. Why would Ryan lie about available office space? The obvious answer made my stomach turn. He was trying to get me to put up $200,000 for a non-existent opportunity, but that made no sense. Ryan was my friend, my partner. Our company was finally doing well. Why would he try to scam me now? Unless he somehow knew about the lottery win. The next day was Saturday, but I couldn't wait until Monday to get answers. I drove to our office, using my key to let myself in. Ryan and I had the same access to everything, files, accounts, emails, no secrets between partners. Or so I thought. I sat at his desk and turned on his computer. His password was the same one he'd always use. his childhood dog's name plus the year we founded Horizon. I felt guilty for about 3 seconds before the urgency of my suspicions overrode it. For an hour, I found nothing unusual. Client correspondence, project files, personal emails about fantasy football, and plans with his girlfriend. I was starting to feel like a paranoid idiot when I noticed a folder labeled Parker Expansion tucked inside his personal documents. Inside were detailed floor plans of the Parker building, photos of office interiors, and a draft of a lease agreement. The documents looked legitimate at first glance, but examining them closer, I noticed inconsistencies. The leasing agent's email domain didn't match the company's actual website. The floor plans showed suite numbers that, according to the building directory I'd looked up online, didn't exist. Most damning of all was a spreadsheet titled Investment Recovery, which outlined a plan to secure $200,000 initial capital, followed by a series of transactions that would essentially drain the amount into various accounts while creating the illusion of legitimate business expenses. My friend, my best friend, was planning to steal from me, but $200,000 was a lot of money to risk his reputation and possibly his freedom for. It didn't make sense unless he knew I could easily replace it now. I dug deeper, scanning his email trash folder. There it was, an email from 3 days ago with the subject line, R.E. Reynolds Lottery Confirmation. It had been forwarded from someone at the State Lottery Commission's office to Ryan's personal email. Someone at the commission had leaked my win to Ryan. The email was brief. Confirmed. Ethan Reynolds, $28 million jackpot, claiming through Northern Trust LLC. Payment processing now. Confidential. Do not share this information. I sat back, feeling physically ill. The timing matched perfectly. Ryan had approached me about the investment opportunity immediately after learning about my win. The $200,000 was just the beginning. The spreadsheet showed plans for Phase 2 expansion capital of $2 million once the initial theft was successful. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Hey, thought I saw your car in the parking lot. Everything ok? He must have driven past the office. I texted back. Yeah, just picking up some files I forgot. Working from home this weekend. Cool. Thought more about Parker? My fingers hovered over the screen. I could confront him now, call him out on his betrayal. But something held me back. If I revealed what I knew, I'd lose any advantage of surprise. Still thinking. Talk Monday. Sure thing. Let me know if you want to discuss sooner. I gathered evidence from his computer, taking screenshots and sending them to my personal email before carefully closing everything and shutting down his system. Then I called Marcus. You were right, I said when he answered. Ryan knows about the money, and he's trying to scam me. Marcus didn't gloat or say, I told you so. Instead, he asked the practical question. What are you going to do about it? That was the $1 million question, or in this case, the $28 million question. I spent the rest of the weekend in a daze, alternating between grief over the friendship I'd clearly misunderstood and cold anger at the calculated betrayal. By Sunday night, with input from Marcus and my lawyer, I had a plan. Monday morning, I arrived at the office early before Ryan typically showed up. I gathered the entire team, all 12 of our employees, in the conference room. I have some significant company news to share, I began, watching their curious faces. Horizon is about to undergo a major reorganization. I explained that I would be buying out Ryan's ownership stake and that he would no longer be part of the company, effective immediately. The stunned silence was broken by confused questions, which I answered as diplomatically as possible without revealing the full extent of Ryan's planned betrayal. Ryan has decided to pursue other opportunities, I said, the corporate euphemism tasting bitter on my tongue. I'll be assuming full leadership of Horizon moving forward, with some exciting growth plans I'll share in the coming weeks. As the team filed out, still murmuring among themselves, I prepared for the confrontation I knew was coming. Sure enough, Ryan burst through the office door 20 minutes later, face flushed with anger. What the hell, Ethan? You're forcing me out, after everything we've built together. I gestured to my office. Let's talk privately. Once the door closed behind us, I turned to face the man I trusted more than anyone except my family. I know about the Parker building scam, Ryan. I know about the fake lease, the plan to drain the $200,000, and the Phase 2 where you'd go after $2 million more. The color drained from his face. I don't know what you're talking about. I also know you found out about my lottery win, I continued calmly. Someone at the commission leaked it to you 3 days ago. Ryan's expression shifted from shock to denial to calculating silence as he realized how thoroughly he'd been caught. It wasn't personal, he finally said, his voice quiet. It was just business. Stealing from your best friend is just business. He shrugged, his facade crumbling. You were going to be set for life. 28 million, Ethan. Do you know what I could do with even a fraction of that? All those years we struggled, barely making payroll, eating ramen while refinancing my apartment, and suddenly you hit the jackpot. Where's my reward for sticking with you with this company? Your reward is your ownership stake in a now profitable business that we built together, I said, my voice hardening. At least it was. I slid a document across my desk. This is my offer to buy out your 40% ownership of Horizon. It's generous, more than fair based on current valuation. Sign it and we're done. No criminal charges, no public exposure of what you tried to do. Ryan glanced at the figure, his eyebrows raising despite himself. It was indeed generous, nearly triple what his stake was worth on paper. And if I don't sign? Then I'll go to the police with evidence of your attempted fraud. I'll contact the Lottery Commission about their security breach. I'll make sure every tech company in a 100-mile radius knows that you tried to steal from your business partner. Your reputation will be destroyed, and you'll likely face criminal charges. He stared at me, a flicker of the old Ryan, the friend I thought I knew, crossing his face. I didn't think you had this kind of ruthlessness in you. Neither did I admitted. But I never thought you'd betray me either, so I guess we're both learning new things about each other. Ryan picked up the pen, his hand hovering over the signature line. For what it's worth, I am sorry. Not for trying, but for getting caught. And for losing your friendship. That part was real, at least at the beginning. Just sign the papers, Ryan. After he left, escorted out by security with his personal belongings in a cardboard box, I sat alone in my office, feeling hollow despite my victory. The betrayal hurt more than I cared to admit. For 6 years, I'd considered Ryan my closest friend, someone I trusted implicitly. Now I had to question every moment, every conversation, every seemingly genuine connection we'd shared. Marcus came by that evening with takeout and beer. How are you holding up? I've been better, I admitted, accepting the offered bottle. Keep thinking about all the moments I missed, signs that should have tipped me off. Don't do that to yourself, Marcus advised, settling into my couch. Some people are just really good at hiding who they really are. Ryan had everyone fooled, not just you. Still, I can't help but wonder if Allison was right about him all along. My ex-wife had never quite warmed to Ryan, claiming there was something calculating behind his friendly demeanor. I dismissed her concerns as jealousy over my close friendship. Even a broken clock is right twice a day, Marcus said with a snort. Allison had her own issues with authenticity. Remember how fast she filed for divorce when Horizon hit that rough patch? I did remember. Allison had claimed she couldn't handle the stress of financial instability, but the speed with which she found a new boyfriend, a successful dermatologist with an established practice, suggested other motives. Maybe I'm just a terrible judge of character, I mused, picking at the label on my beer bottle. Or maybe you see the best in people, Marcus countered. That's not a character flaw, Ethan. The world needs more of that, not less. In the following weeks, I threw myself into rebuilding Horizon, not just structurally after Ryan's departure, but culturally as well. I was more cautious with my trust but worked hard not to let cynicism override my leadership. Using a portion of my lottery winnings, now securely managed through my trust. I did lease new office space, not in the Parker building, but in a renovated warehouse in the arts district that better fit our company culture. I promoted our lead developer to CTO and hired additional staff, carefully vetting each candidate. 3 months after Ryan's exit, Horizon was thriving. We'd landed 2 major clients that had previously been out of our reach, and our team had grown to 20 people. The lottery win had allowed me to make strategic investments without the constant financial pressure we'd faced in the early years. Ironically, the betrayal had forced me to step up in ways I might not have otherwise. Without Ryan's charismatic presence to lean on, I'd had to become more confident in my own leadership abilities. One afternoon, as I was leaving a client meeting downtown, I literally bumped into Allison coming out of a restaurant. Ethan, she exclaimed, looking genuinely surprised. How are you? I heard about the whole situation with Ryan. That must have been awful. News travels fast, I observed, wondering how she'd heard. Tech circles smaller than you think, she said with a shrug. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I know how close you two were. Thanks, I said, shifting awkwardly. It was the first time we'd spoken since finalizing our divorce over a year ago. I also heard Horizon's doing really well now, she continued, an odd note in her voice. New office, big clients, growing team. You must be working nonstop. It's been busy, I acknowledged, but good busy. How's? I searched for her boyfriend's name. Derek? Dr. Michael Richardson, she corrected with a slight edge. And we broke up. Creative differences, she laughed lightly, touching my arm. I've actually been thinking about you lately, wondering if we gave up too easily. We had some good times, didn't we? I studied her perfectly styled hair, designer outfit, and carefully applied makeup. She looked exactly the same as when we were married, but somehow I was seeing her differently. We did, I agreed, but I think we both learned what we needed from that relationship. Well, she said, her smile faltering slightly at my lack of enthusiasm. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime. Catch up properly. 6 months ago, I might have jumped at the chance. Now I found myself thinking about the timing, how Allison had left when things looked bleak and was suddenly interested again now that Horizon was successful. I appreciate the offer, I said, but I'm in a different place now. I wish you all the best, though. I really do. Her smile became tight. Of course. Well, it was nice running into you. As she walked away, I felt none of the lingering attachment or regret that had plagued me after our divorce. Instead, there was only a quiet certainty that I'd recognized something important and avoided repeating a mistake. That evening, as I worked late in my new office, I got a text from Marcus. Heard you ran into Allison today. She tried to weasel her way back in, didn't she? News really does travel fast, I texted back. But yes, she did. I declined. Proud of you, bro. By the way, Mom wants you over for dinner Sunday. Says she's got someone she wants you to meet. I groaned. Our mother's matchmaking efforts were well-intentioned but usually disastrous. Tell her I'm busy reinventing myself as a discerning bachelor. Too late. She says her friend Claire's daughter just moved back to town. Apparently she's an environmental lawyer who hates small talk and loves old sci-fi movies. Sounds terrible. You'd better come rescue me from dinner with her. I laughed despite myself. Fine, but you owe me. 6 months ago, my life had been upended by betrayal. First my ex-wife leaving when times got tough. Then my best friend attempting to steal from me. I questioned my judgment, my ability to read people, even my own worth. Now, although more cautious, I realized these painful lessons had actually freed me. I discovered my own resilience, my capacity for leadership, and most importantly, my ability to recognize genuine connections versus those based on what I could provide. The lottery win that Ryan had coveted enough to betray me for had changed my life, but not in the way either of us had expected. The money itself was almost secondary to the clarity it had brought, exposing people's true motivations and forcing me to confront truths I might otherwise have continued to ignore. As I looked around at the company I'd rebuilt and the life I was crafting on my own terms, I felt something unexpected: gratitude. Not for the betrayal itself, but for the growth it had catalyzed. Sometimes the most loyal act a person can perform is to show you exactly who they are, even when that revelation comes through betrayal.